some of my contact information. So as you know, networking is extremely important. So I welcome you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if you're on other social media channels, this is my information where you can find me, and I'll be glad to network or answer any follow-up information that you may have or questions and everything. So tonight's webinar, we are going to discuss, we're going to define leadership. We're going to talk about different leadership traits. We're going to go over some successful leadership tips, strategies for those of you that may be new leaders. Also, if you have already an established leader or want to maybe refresh your skills, we'll talk about how to improve your leadership strategy. And then we'll take a brief moment to discuss decision making, because that is a big piece in leadership skills. For myself, as Ann said, I graduated from MCP. I was very active in college, but like most pharmacists, we like to do pharmacy when we're not doing our day job. So I have been president of the Mass Pharmacists Association. I've been on the board for APHA, and I have been a Speaker of the House for Phi Lambda Sigma, and then also Grand President for my pharmacy fraternity. So I've been many different roles, from college to as a new leader to now as more of an established leader. And, you know, one of the things I love the most is being able to certainly network, but also mentor new leaders and talk about a lot of things that I've learned along the way and from a lot of my mentors that I had in pharmacy. All right, so let's start off in kind of defining what we're talking about here today and what exactly is leadership. So leadership is really the ability to influence others with or without authority. Leadership is serving the people that work for you by giving them the tools for them to need to be able to succeed. A leader is also somebody who has the clarity or the vision to know the right things to do, the confidence to know when he or she may be wrong, and the courage to do the right thing, even when it is not popular. And I want to take a moment to pause there, because that's often what separates the good from the great, is really being able to do this very effectively. A leader is also able to see a problem and then find a solution. So leaders are not problem identifiers. They are definitely problem resolvers. And good leaders make the people that they are leading accomplish more than maybe they would otherwise do at any given time in their career. So there's a real big difference between leadership and management. And so that's why I want to really take a moment to define here, so you understand exactly what leadership is. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the difference with management. So what does a successful leadership look like? That is somebody that would possess direction and vision in what they want to do, right? They know the road to go down. They also realize that they don't have all the answers. And that's one of the things I specifically like the most about a lot of my mentors and leaders that I worked with, is they were fully comfortable in saying, I don't know. Let's check it out. Let's get more resources. Let's do more homework. So a lot of people think that they have to have the exact answer, right? We all come from a medical background. So this is where the difference is in what we do professionally every day to how we have to think about being a leader, where we're expected to have all the answers, right? And know everything from a medical perspective and in different healthcare careers. But here under leadership, you know, really think about that. So I think we have to recognize what makes us great in our jobs as healthcare professionals every day, and how that could sometimes hinder us in different areas. A leader also is a great teacher, a great coach. They also have a strength in admitting an error, or what I like to call it is saying what's the elephant in the room, acknowledging an error, something that happened, taking their hand and say, I own it. Those folks are really the leaders that I respect the most. And then success is dependent upon the ability also to be able to work with others, right? They're always somebody who's able to find a way. They recognize and celebrate their team and their accomplishments in what they do every single day. So they are very heavy on, it's not just the praise, but thoughtful recognition and praise when it is appropriate. Leader views leadership as a responsibility rather than a rank and a privilege. one of the things I'm probably still working on is listening twice as often as you speak. I think you will notice that really great leaders do that quite a bit. And then effective leaders certainly earn the trust of the folks that they are working with. And that's an extremely important piece in leadership, that they have to feel that they can trust you, they're on your side, and they have comfort in working with you also. So let's talk now about some different leadership traits. So these are sort of Christine's, I think, top 10 in what I think are the leadership traits that stand out the most for our leadership skills. And that would be honesty, innovation, competence, inspiration, intelligence, a guiding vision, passion, integrity, openness, and dedication. So I'll break those down now for all of you. So to kind of understand, just again, over all these years, what I've been able to put together on what I feel are the most important leadership traits that can really make you from a good to a great leader. So when it comes for your honesty, right? Honesty certainly means more than not just lying, right? That's where that trust is really developed. They openly display how to handle a mistake when it happens, right? And having some emotional intelligence when those things go on and handling those situations. Increasing confidence and trust within the team is extremely important. I think I've mentioned trust already multiple times. And then demonstrating their trustworthiness and, again, their ability to admit and make mistakes. So I think these are really the most important things when you want to build honesty and trust with your team. And then innovation is certainly very important too. A leader envisions and will then share their goals. So communication is extremely important in sharing those ideas, where we're going, right? If you want to get everybody on your train on where you're going, you're going to have to communicate what those ideas are and what those goals are and where we should be. It's also important not to make any empty promises to people. That's immediately a way that you can not just erode trust, but you won't be able to innovate or get anywhere, right? Because people are getting off your bus. And then effectively, they lead with a purpose in what they are doing. All right, competence, to acknowledge the team's strengths and weaknesses, also being able to pivot and adjust to achieve the goals that need to be had. I think we all, over the pandemic, learned quite a bit as healthcare practitioners of how we have to pivot and adjust at any moment's notice. Leadership is essential to be able to really, right? You are the flag bearer of that type of process. So you have to know when to make those adjustments and those pivots in what you're doing. Certainly when you're working on achieving those goals, to be able to celebrate and mention your team's accomplishments and demonstrate vision. So this is one of the things that you can go back and think about as some of the homework, right? What can you do to celebrate and mention your team's accomplishment? Not just a pat on the back and congratulating them. What else could you really do so that your team members really feel that you are recognizing what they are doing? So take that back and really think about what could be done on that area. And then people certainly want inspiration, right? They want to be inspired. They want to believe that they are changing the world and making a difference, right? I hear it all the time. For healthcare practitioners, we want to be able to help people. We want to make a difference for people. So being a source of inspiration for your team, right? Our work environments can often be high stress, a lot of expectations. So this is really important, right? To know that they're being inspired by you as a leader and that you have their trust and also honest with them, as I mentioned. Showing passion and inspiring their team, right? So again, think of how you can become more inspiring, right? Think about people that inspire you, analyze what their communication skills, update the methods to be able to express your goals. So kind of think about somebody to emulate or somebody that's doing well, and then start to try to incorporate those type of things into your practice and what you're doing. So intelligence is certainly important. I know firsthand that a pharmacy education is a foundation for a lifelong learning. I think that is certainly the same for everyone else in their particular area of healthcare, right? Is that going to MCP that inspired us to have a lifelong learning. And even if you're not expired, well, the boards and there's many requirements where we must have those continue education and lifelong learning that is required for us to do. So exhibit a commitment to the learning for yourself and for your team. And then remember that it's certainly okay to display your intelligence, right? There's always a fine line between being overconfident or over arrogant. Make sure that you exhibit competent leadership. Make sure you are thinking about posing thoughtful, intelligent questions to your team, and also allow your team to explain their expertise or communicate to you what some of their ideas or their thoughts are at any time when you're working with them. Guiding vision is extremely important for a leader. Good leaders have a vision or a philosophy, and they know what they want to accomplish, right? So they know the path that they want to be on, and they definitely have the strength of character to be able to work on those objectives, even if they are facing some opposition or challenges. If there's failures along the way, they're not people that just opt out. They will sort of find another way to move that iceberg. They will establish really achievable goals and then break down the plan on how those goals would be able to be achieved. And then again, as we mentioned before, be able to pivot and change based on how things are. And the leader with vision has a clear, really vivid, bright picture of where they want to go, and they have a very firm grasp on what that success model is going to look like, because they thought of that, they've envisioned that, it's their guiding philosophy, so they know what it looks like when they get there. All right, a passion. Right, we want our leaders to have a passion for what they're doing, to really be able to passionately go after their goals, to be able to communicate clearly and passionately about what needs to be done. They also have that little, inner voice inside of them that really pushes them to get to the heart of the issue or find a solution, right? Get to the root cause of what may be a problem. And again, that's not always easy to do. There's more time and energy, but they're willing to put in that because they have a passion for being able to make improvements. They drill for those specific answers, and they really don't give up until they're able to find the answers to those questions. And they're highly energetic, and they're definitely constantly driving for those priorities in the right type of energy and passion that you were supposed to have, that also is able to be absorbed by the rest of your team. And leaders only make promises that they can follow through on. So they're not making a lot of empty promises. That's very important in their integrity. Their outward actions match their inner values, right? So I think when you have a good, I would say this is a good human. Like this pharmacist I'm working with, that's a good humor. It's a good person. And then most likely everything else is really going to come around that, right? They're more concerned with everyone else than they are concerned with their team. So what they do outwardly also reflects what their inner values are. They deal with things honestly. They look at what some of the predictable reactions may be. They're able to really control their emotions well. And there's not somebody who's having a meltdown, an outburst. Those are all signs of having good integrity, really being able to handle things and having the integrity of the group. If you're in a leadership position, certainly in a healthcare, right, you want to keep things together, especially as we are often dealing with different life and death type of situations. So again, things that you do on the job, in our careers, those are things that have to transfer over when you are in the leadership position in a similar type of role. And they are really somebody who is centered in their integrity. And when you are, I think that you also become very approachable for your team because you're predictable, right? They know what to predict. They know that this is going to be a good interaction if they come to you and speak to you about something that is concerning. Openness, I also feel, is very important in a leader, being able to listen to new ideas, even if they don't conform to a usual way of thinking. So basically someone who's not going to say, well, that's, I'm sure you've heard it at work, right? That's not the way we do things around here. This is the way we do it, but to obviously listen and then provide feedback, open communication, more dialogue, because even if it isn't the usual way you do it, maybe there is a better way to look at things. I often try and remember, like maybe when I'm having a difference of opinion with somebody that I'm working is, I remember that we both want the same goal, but we're probably taking two different avenues to get to the same destination. So we have to work out those different avenues and find out positives and negatives from each side to try and bring consensus together to be able to work for that. And that really comes from a sense of openness, being willing to hear from another person what they are doing, even if it's recognized, hey, there's something that you did that just, it's not working for the team or for the business. Let's try and do something different to make our working environment better, or whatever goal that you're working for, a project. So good leaders are obviously able to suspend their judgment and make sure that they're, as I just mentioned, listening to others' ideas, being acceptable of new ways of doing things, even if it's something certainly that somebody else has thought of. And then, right, we want to go back and think before we want to recognize and praise when a member of your team has brought something that's made a contribution, is not to take ownership of that, but to recognize that is again going to be a huge win. And then being open, enhancing the candor, and also open communication is also extremely important at that time when you want to make sure that you're working on the leadership skill of openness. And then dedication is extremely important, spending whatever time or energy necessary to accomplish whatever the goal is at hand. A leader is definitely going to inspire the dedication, leading by example, doing whatever it takes to complete that next step towards the goal or the vision. And then they are always going to be setting a great example of how to achieve, right? They come from a good to great type of mindset, and they're dedicated to make sure that they're dedicated to the team, they're dedicated to the goals, they're dedicated to the company, the patients, whatever the case is, but they definitely have a spirit of dedication in their DNA. All right, so those are, again, Christine's top 10 things that you really want to look at in all of the different type of skills or competencies that we want to have in a leader. So for those of you that are just becoming, just graduated or stepping into the first time in your new leadership role, so we want to spend some time in discussing what are some success strategies for new leaders. And again, I've kind of broke them into these 6 different boxes. So the first one would be promoting yourself, then how you can accelerate your learning, how to match some strategies to different situations, how to secure some early wins, building your team, and then ultimately being able to maintain balance. And I think the first thing I want to recognize as a new leader, right, you're going to make some missteps. You are going to even make some mistakes. You may not make the right judgment, but I think the most important thing is to recognize that and then change, be open to change and pivot when that occurs. And for me, I did a lot of that during my college career, where I made those early mistakes before. Essentially, I was in my job, or right when somebody was, I say, paying me, right, not to make mistakes, and being able to be a good leader. Also in a lot of the organization roles that I had, that I transferred right after college, I kind of learned what to do, so that by the time I got into more senior roles where I was the president of more national organizations or state-based, I had already honed my skills and learned things, mistakes that I should or not make, or definitely not repeat again if I didn't do well the first time. So that's all going to happen to a new leader that's just kind of figuring things out. But when you are a new leader role, it's important to make sure that you promote yourself, plan your goals, plan those milestones, and definitely write out how you're going to achieve those things on specific times. So it's important to set the goal, but also to set a timeline, and then also a marketing plan on how you would go ahead and achieve those goals. Also being able to look at where the vulnerabilities here, right? Where are things that could go right, where could go wrong. So some tools to be able to deal with that would be self-discipline, team building, and then getting advice and counsel when you're dealing with some of those challenges that could come up, or problems that could come up. All right, the next box here is to accelerate your learning. So again, plan to learn, right? Plan to make mistakes, plan to accept those things that are going to happen, and then be able to seek advice from those who can certainly help you understand something that is new. It's okay, just because you're a leader of a department, or of a new organization, doesn't mean that you understand everything that goes on and every task that is being done or every role for your team. So it's important to be able to seek advice, spend some time, communicate, understand what each person is doing within the organization, so that you can see maybe there is some synergies, maybe there's things that you are repeating that you could eliminate, and then time could be spent better focused on something else, or better focused on your patients. Understand the history of an organization. I think that's always important, to understand what's been done before, what worked, what didn't work, what were the pros and cons of that, and then where things might be able to go in the future. So it's important to be able to ask everybody, has this come up? What have you done before? And get their feedback from situations. And just because something didn't work in the past doesn't mean that it won't work if you try it again with the appropriate maybe tweaks that were there. Technology changes, progression in medical science changes, and all these things where maybe something we did 5 years ago, if it was to come up. So that's why that history is important to understand from your group. Again, it's important, I think, to listen, observe first. That's sort of kind of business 101. Is not going into a new leadership position and starting to make that change immediately. I often say that change is definitely that 4-letter word that nobody wants to hear. So I think it's important to not walk right in with changes, but it's important to come in, learn who your team is, learn what gets done, learn the roles, that everything's done, and then start to make those slow changes. But you have to listen and observe first for your team, so they feel that they've been heard before you start making some innovations there. And make sure to try and use a structured learning process that can make sure that you're using good use of time, and that of course can also help the accelerate in a transition that is going on. So you want to match some strategies to situations, and this does take a little bit of time to kind of think about that. So as a new leader, you have to spend some time here. And there are usually 3 types of situations a new leader has to contend with. It's either a startup, a turnaround, or being able to sustain success. So we talk about starting up. That's a case where people may be really excited, right? I'm really excited, they're ready to go, but they lack the direction at that time. So you'll have to take that energy and you want to channel it in a very productive way. So versus everyone kind of running around trying to do something and excited about it, you want to make sure that you make it very productive and thoughtful. The next phase would be the turnaround, right? And during that phase, people can often, I guess, let's say that feel that they're losing some air in their balloon. They may feel demoralized. Look at where the weak links may be, and then try to redirect from there. And then finally, being able to reach a success point that you want to sustain. So make sure that you try and preserve the vitality of the organization, find new challenges, maintain growth, I think is very important. I hear that from my peers all the time. They want to grow, they want to do different things. So that success has to be sustained while you are going through different type of situations. So look at your strategies, look at the different situations and kind of the phases that your team may be in, and being able to recognize that, that I know I'm working on a committee right now. And I know in our January meeting, I said, well, this is the time in our work where we're losing a little bit of energy. we may have not seen the type of success that we want to have. So people are feeling a little bit of down. So what can you do? I always say, I recognize the elephant in the room, right? I recognize that everybody, but we do need to focus on this. So instead of giving them maybe 8 things to focus on, maybe right now during that turnaround period, you want to give them maybe 1 or 2 very important goals to really put their energy in, because we're having it's a bit of a roller coaster. We're having a little bit of a dip at that time. So I always, again, like to just recognize and call it out. Hey, listen, I'm feeling it too. Everybody's feeling it. Now, what can we do to kind of get a bit of a turnaround and get our energy back where it needs to go? And then securing early wins. This is one of the things that my pharmacist and my mentor, Donna Horn and Mary Greer and Patty Keenly, told me very early in my career when I moved into leadership role. They're like, listen, get some early wins right away. And they were like, if somebody wants something, like I need a new white coat, I need a new name tag, just something really easy. She said, get it for them, get a win. Like they asked you for something as simple as that. As having, can I get a new white coat? Get it for them. If they've had trouble getting it before, or another supply that they need to do their job effectively, find the win, get it for them. And that helps build that rapport with the person. So when people are talking, and ask them, what do you need? What do you need to do your job? What can I help you with? And then whatever they're telling you, then that's your opportunity to secure that win and be able to see if you can make it happen, whatever they're looking for. So, in this case, folks may be demanding, but able to be satisfied. They also may be accessible, but not too familiar. There may be some decisive, but not judicious decision-making going on, active without causing commotion, and willing to make some tough decisions while, again, still remaining humane, are all things that strategies that you have to look at as you're going through securing some of those early wins. But that's really important for any of you that might be brand new into your career. As you're listening and learning during that period, if you can find an early win, then go ahead and do it. It'll get you essentially a lot of points with the team that you are working with. And then some other areas to secure some early wins would be keep those long-term goals in mind while you're identifying areas where maybe an improvement could be made really, really quickly. That again will benefit the team. Promote people who have the insight, the drive, the incentives to be able to meet the goals or whatever is on your agenda. And then again, it's extremely important to reward success for your team. One of the things that our team does that I started was we call it high fives. So our team gives each other high fives each month, and then we go ahead and I put those all together and then publicize it to our whole team. So it's not just our bosses or our leadership recognizing what we are, but we are recognizing it among each other as peers or as a department, as a team, and sharing those successes so that everybody knows what happens, whether it was something really small or something really big, but it made a difference for one of your team members. So rewarding and recognizing success is really important. Like I said, think of some ways that you could do that. These are ways that you can get some early wins for your team. And then when you are actually building a team, right, you have to assess each one of your existing members before you make any changes. And some things that you want to consider when making your assessment is what is the level of competence, their judgment, what is their dedication and energy, where's their focus, what is the relationship in the team, and is there a level of trust? And this is when things can get, right, when the people factor can get really challenging for a new manager as you're getting into these areas, but it's important to build a winning team. And these are a lot of the competencies or areas that you want to look at that you want to find wins in your team members. So once you have assessed, then you want to go ahead and assign each member to a different category. Keep those in place, right? Those that you want to retain. The others that you want to develop, that they need a little bit more training or coaching to be able to move up to the next level. Those that you may want to move, right, that they perform well or they do well, but they're just not, the position is not a match for them. So where else can they be a benefit to your team or the organization? And sometimes that is a transfer to another department. Then there's also the opportunity to observe, right, wait and see. what happens and if some of those changes and improvements make. And then if that doesn't happen, then you would either look at a retraining or replace, and then prioritize for the termination, plan for that, and make sure you have somebody else that's trained and developed and ready to go. And again, these are tough decisions and tough things, but if leadership wasn't tough, then everybody would be doing it. But as you get into those areas of assessing your team and figuring out these are the tough decisions that have to be made, but you want to use all of the appropriate analytical skills in evaluating this and putting people in sort of the right category in what you need to do to make sure that they succeed. Because as a leader, your job is not really to term per se. Your job is to develop and get people where they can find a winning role or winning area with your business. And then once your restructuring is complete, then you can go back in and really now adjust your goals, right? Because if you don't have the team in the right places, then you're not going to be hitting your goals. Everything is just sort of going awry. You may have some problems within the team. So until you have the team structure down right, you're not going to move the dial in hitting those goals. But you'll be pleasantly surprised when you do the hard work of building your team and then getting everybody aligned, that it's sort of that all the dominoes start to flow or drop where you want them to. So at that time, then you can start to adjust your goals and incentives. You can then start to measure performance and then strategize on ways to make some other improvements. You can then establish some new processes, changes, start to delegate tasks out to the team. And then also you're in a better position there to be able to explain some new processes or changes or improvements. And then again, everybody sort of understands what you would be planning and doing, right? So getting the team in the right position is extremely important. And then the domino effect comes on. So if you feel as a leader, as a new leader, that you're banging your head against the wall, or you're sort of going in a bit of a circle or a merry-go-round and you want off of that, you may have to go back and do some restructuring of your team so that you'll be able to move the dial. And then finally, maintaining your balance. So being a leader is a continual balancing act. It's never going to go away. As I said, if leadership was easy, everyone would be doing it. There is hard work there, and there's a lot of balancing acts that you have to do. So be careful of some of the 7 traps that I talk about in there. It's giving unclear direction, right? And if your team doesn't understand something, one of the things I do immediately is I do a self-reflection, because it's quite possibly that I did not explain things effectively to my team. I may have given unclear boundaries. I understand and thought I was explaining it correctly to my team, but obviously I'm not getting the results. So you have to be aware of what's happening and watch what's going on. And if things aren't working, it certainly could be a training issue, but self-reflect first to see if you didn't explain something correctly. If you notice that you're getting more questions after you've had a meeting or giving some direction to your team, that could have been a case that it just wasn't clear, or you could also be using language that they're not understanding, right? And while we'd like somebody in the room to raise their hand and say, hey, can you repeat that? Or I'm not following you, we know full well that a lot of people do not do that, or have some fear in kind of identifying something that they don't know. So you as a leader can also be extremely helpful to make sure that that's a safe environment, right? And they feel comfortable doing it. Also, you should be able to, I like to say, just do some checks. How are we doing? Does everybody understand? Do I need to repeat anything? So do some self-reflection first to see if anything was unclear. If not, then you may have to go back and relook at things. Other areas of the 7 traps would be having any brittleness, isolation, biased judgment. We have to be aware that there are biases that happen, and you have to self-reflect again to see if that's there. Also any avoidance or diminished returns that are happening. So think about that in your balance act. Be aware of the actions, utilize your energy or discipline, be able to self-reflect, and then again, monitor the process, as I mentioned earlier. Try to build a network of trusted, value leaders that you may know that you can go to for advice or go to for counseling. Hey, I'd like to bounce something off of you, and they be able to tell you already, hey, this is what I think. Let you go back and work things up. I'm sure you have all been to a meeting where, they make some big announcement and everything, and everybody starts raising their hands, but this, but that, and this won't work, and this, probably because they didn't maybe run everything through their network first to get some initial feedback before introducing it to the whole team. It would be a version of a beta testing, right? We're very familiar with that with technology. You beta test before you roll it out to everybody. I don't know why as leaders we don't do that more and do our own sort of internal beta testing and taking maybe a trusted colleague and kind of running through something with them to see what initially they are picking up, that may be some red flags or some gaps there, so that when you do be able to share it with everybody, basically you're putting forth a better ideal for them. And then obviously you want to be able to listen to your team and be open to what that feedback is, even if that's tweaking something. I know I did a project probably about 2 months ago, and again, I thought I had everything. I reviewed it with our committee, and then I threw it out there, and of course, one or two people found something. I'm like, dang it, I wish I had figured that out. I saw what they had before, had to go back and change it up, but I wanted it to be one and done at that time and have it ready to go. I thought I did absolutely every, cross check that I needed, but when it got out in front of the whole team, they recognized 2 areas that I need to tweak. So yeah, back to make it, improve it. But yes, I was sort of kicking myself that it had to be done. So even if you try the most, when it goes out to the team, it can happen. You have to be open to their feedback in what needs to be improved. And then try to use your internal and external associates again, to be able to, that may have strengths in areas that you don't, whether it's technical, cultural, different type of political issues, in institution. I'm not talking about, Republicans and Democrats. I'm talking about political issues and things within your institution that you're dealing with. All right. All right, so let's pause here for a moment and then, kind of absorb what you've just learned about being a new leader. And then let's talk about ways to improve your leadership, right? So if you are already an established leader, or you've been doing a role for a while, here are some ways that you can sort of polish up or go back and reflect, maybe some things that you need to refocus on. So following these different type of methods are going to help you to maximize your leadership potential. So things that you can do would be being technically and tactically proficient in what you're doing, seeking improvement, self-improvement first, right? I always say I self-reflect first to see if all of those checks and minuses are there, and then I move forward. Make sure that you know your team, and communication is extremely important. I don't think you can ever, I know there's a balance between over communicating, but I don't think that you can ever really over communicate if you do it very effectively and making sure everybody's informed of what is going on. Try not to control the information per se, unless it is proprietary, but keep everybody informed, essentially in the loop. Make sure that nobody is surprised. People appreciate that. Lead by example. Be exactly what you ask your team to be, and certainly, do what you ask your team also to do. That's very important. And again, I think that that's a real respect factor. I remember one of my good friends is a nurse, and I remember that she had said that, they didn't really respect any nurse, manager, or leader that came in who didn't start from the beginning, right? And didn't do those jobs in the hospital, like emptying urinals or helping a patient with any type of, urinary type of problems, or changing a senior's diaper in the hospital, that they really talked about that. So they were like, unless you've done the real core work of a nurse and sort of the dirty work of the different professions we're in, they didn't have a lot of respect for them. And they wanted to really know that, where they had come from, right? Did you come from the front lines? Do you understand these things that we have to do? Have you been there? And that had a big thing to do with respecting that nurse manager, right? So it can be a tough road out there in leadership. So ensuring that each task is understood, that it's supervised, it's accomplished, make sure you do the appropriate follow-up and accountability. Training your team is extremely important, and really great leaders are very effective in training and developing their team. They also make very sound and timely decisions, so something to think about there. Develop a sense of responsibility in your whole team. Employ your command in accordance with its capabilities, seek responsibilities, take responsibility for your action, right? The ownership piece, I think, is extremely important if you want to improve or sharpen your leadership skills. And then when we look at an authentic leader, they are always going to demonstrate a passion for their purpose. They do practice their values consistently. They lead with their hearts along with their heads. They establish long-term meaningful relationships, and they have a great network that they can call upon. They have self-discipline to get the results or get to the bottom of things, and they definitely know who they are. And extraordinary leaders, you will find they are just very high productive, right? You know those people, the kind of the, I like to say the Tony Robbins groupies, right? They're up at 5 a.m., they're running 10 miles before they get to work. These are all things I do not do, but you know who they are in doing all of that. They're really extraordinary in being able to balance everything in their life and being very productive. They also have, this is really key here, right? Because we know the hit and things that are going on in healthcare right now. They have low turnover in their organizations, because I think you've all heard the phrase, people don't leave organizations, they leave a bad situation or a bad boss. So an extraordinary leader has done all of those things right, but they really have the buy-in and they have the support from their team, and therefore they have low turnover. So if you are experiencing that in your organization, again, self-reflect and see if there's something that you need to adjust and change. Maybe doing a 360, having a meeting with some value team members who are really going to communicate to you and let you know, listen, this is the word on the street, this is what's not working. I think the team thinks to be a better leader, you could do X, Y, Z, and then you really have to be open for that feedback and then start to make some of those changes. They also generate high customer satisfaction. Their staff, again, is very satisfied, which is why they're not leaving. They're innovative in their approaches and thoughts. And again, they have positive relationships with all of their resource people, different partners, different departments, different suppliers, different resources that they work with. Those are all positive relationships. So it's not just an internal, but it's also an external factor. All right, so I wanted to talk here a little bit about decision making, because I think this is very challenging for a lot of leaders, even established leaders, right, is to try to make the right decision. And again, thinking about what we do in our profession every day, right, is we have to, our patient lives are on the line, and we have to make the right decision all the time. But I think when it comes to leadership, a lot of people tend to really struggle in being able to make the right decision. And there's a lot of, I guess, hangups with that. And I kind of went again, like, let's just call the elephant in the room on what those challenges are that people have in making their decisions. Because as a leader, your team wants you to do that. They want you to lead. They want you to manage things. They want you to make decisions. And again, using all the parameters and how you go about doing that. But it's not somebody that can kind of sort of hide out or not be able to take, those darts that are being sent around your pharmacy or your wing or unit that you're working in. So one of the challenges that people have when making decisions is they're trying to make everybody happy, and they're worrying about what people will say, right? So they're worrying, they're spending their energy and time in areas that are not going to be productive to make the decision, right? So you're using, I don't know anybody who has a lot of extra time to spare. I don't know who they are. They certainly aren't anybody in healthcare that has a lot of extra time. So when you are worrying about what other people are saying, when you're trying to please everyone, there's a lot of time and energy being spent there that you could probably add to something else, comparing yourself to others. Perfectionism is often a factor. Again, we have to be perfect in our roles as healthcare practitioners, often young leaders and female leaders often struggle with a perfectionism kind of syndrome going on. Again, they're wanting to be liked. There's a fear of the failure, right? What if I make the wrong decisions? What could happen? I think sometimes we make a much bigger thing, right? If it doesn't work, then we're going to pivot and make a change, and then I'll work towards something new. So you shouldn't think of if something doesn't go right, that's a failure. You're putting way too much weight on certain circumstances. So that has to be measured. Another thing is just repeating those same mistakes over and over and over again, and nobody's making a decision or trying to get out of the spiral or the hole that you're going into. Waiting for direction, waiting for everyone's approval to be able to make a decision. And again, realize that not everybody's going to be happy with the decision. Sometimes you'll get everybody to be on board, but you want to make sure that you have the respect for your team, that who's going to be on board with things, but also realize that not everybody is going to be happy with things that happen, and that is okay up until a certain point. Smart leaders make bad decisions, and those bad decisions are usually because their emotions got in the way and they used emotions in their decision making, and that's what is to blame. So as you are worrying about making a mistake and failure in things, that is a lot more emotion that you're bringing it in. So smart leaders are going to not use those factors and those emotions to make their decision, because we know that when that is introduced and there's too much emotion in things, that bad decisions are often going to be made, right? So kind of think about that. Emotions also crowd out any objectivity that you may have in situations, being able to analyze things. You want to be able to sometimes use your network and tap into the wisdom of other leaders, right? And how they may handle it. Maybe run through with that trusted leader. Hey, this is what I'm thinking of. This is my problem. This is how I'm thinking of doing it. Again, what feedback do you have? So using your small trusted network to bounce things off of. Trying to adopt a third person perspective. I always put myself in the other person's shoes and think about how they're going to hear it, how they're going to read it, and then what could I try and do to get a better situation. So when you are trying to get emotional factor out of your decision making, being a third person perspective can also be extremely helpful. Sometimes you have to listen to your gut and not to your heart, and do what you know is right or what feels right. Emotions can hinder logic. So again, recognizing that, and use an objective mode of judgment, one that is based on the facts. If you're somebody who has to write out the pros and cons, then go ahead and do something like that so that you can look at the facts and get the emotions out of things. And then when you are able to control your emotions, you are going to be better at making decisions. Okay. And then other ways to remove emotion from decision making would be to learn to identify when your emotions are negatively impacting your ability to lead or be successful. That would be the time to pause and then come back and reassess the situation. Sometimes you can't always rely on your gut instincts to do this and that. You have to be able to put it in writing and analyze and looking things, narrow down what your options are. You should always have if you're going to make a decision, then you have to have confidence in that decision. And try and have some zero-based thinking, right, in the hindsight. Try to do the right thing and manage with your head and not with your heart is really something important. All of those things doesn't mean that you are not a caring individual. You can still be that, along with removing emotions from the decision making. So they really are two different things. And then, yes, as a pharmacist, I like to have some fun here and talk about what a prescription is for being a good, solid leader. As I've talked about, it's having good competence, having knowledge, making sure that you're following through on commitments, have a commit to a personal growth and development as a leader, right? That's something, a muscle that you're always going to have to be flexing and training on. Share and seek information willingly, be open, be proactive versus reactive. Make sure you involve the correct people when making your decisions. Try and always be approachable and available, and create a supportive climate where others can always do their best every day. Encourage others to be able to achieve their full potential. Primary focus should always remain on the customer. Determine what the customer needs are or the patient's needs, make some improvements. Commit to having an ongoing process of improvement and preventive actions, improving systems. Think about how that could be for yourself and also then for your team. Do you schedule in services, in trainings? Is that part of your monthly leadership, that everybody is doing that? Do you schedule it all and do it as one group so everybody's getting that training? Something to think about along with yourself. Seek different opportunities, different partnerships, show some initiatives, identify different opportunities, make sure you get everybody involved in your institution or your company if possible, and be flexible and be willing to change, be willing to pivot when things come up and when it's needed. Try and always have a glasses half full, have a very positive attitude in everything that you will do. I notice great leaders always find a way to make it work and get it done. If something doesn't go well, own it, accept it, and then learn from your own mistakes as well as others. Remember, it's always important to recognize and give credit when it's due. Be compassionate when you are reviewing your team members' progress or lack thereof. Again, recognize it. So one of the things as a leader you have to do, quite sure, is you have to do those evaluations with your team. That should be a positive experience, even if some of the reviews you have are not positive, but it be focused on what's not working and then what you need to do to make an improvement, versus someone feeling that, you know, they were just got a tongue lashing from that session and they leave feeling worse about themselves. You always want people leaving a meeting or an evaluation feeling good about what those next steps or what has to be done. Great leaders also turn a disaster or problem into an opportunity, right? What occurred, what happened, let's get to the root cause, and then let's try and get through every obstacle. They look at when you've done that as being a personal triumph for yourself or for the team you're working with. When you want to tell something what to do, you may have to do it personally, right? One-on-one, that sometimes an email or a text just isn't going to cut it. So you have to come out of your office or out of your position and do it personally if you want to get the results. And then also don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and doing the roles and tasks that you are asking others to do, especially when new things are rolled out, so you understand how things are working. So again, being on the front lines is very important as a leader. Try and listen effectively, encourage teamwork and participation, empower your team members to make decisions, to find wins themselves, to make it work. Communicating effectively is important. Emphasize long-term productivity versus just not a short-term win, but what's good long-term for everyone. Make sound and timely decisions. Treat each person as an individual while recognizing them as a valued member of the team. Certainly know yourself, but also know who your team are, and at all cases, if you have to take a bullet for them, take a bullet for them. Your team will love you for it. So protecting them is really important. They want to know that their boss has their back. You've heard that many times. That's really important. And have the vision, have the courage, and have the commitment as a leader. So some take-home points that I just want to leave you all here before we open it up for questions is, you know, your unit or your organization, your pharmacy, your hospital you work in, those all depend on the quality of the leadership. Again, remember, people leave bad bosses, not bad companies. Leadership is about action. Leadership is required to take your organization to the next level. Good associates are not going to stay in any organization that is lacking quality leadership. And in today's hot job market, in what we're looking at with healthcare right now, there are lots of opportunities at each one of our doors right now. So people are just post-pandemic, not going to stand for these things anymore, and they're going to make a change. So leadership is going to be about action. Running a successful pharmacy, a successful department, that's going to require a great deal of organization and confidence. So you need to have that. If your team is engaged and complimented, they will often strive for excellence. Remember to avoid making emotional decisions. Remember, there's a difference between being respected as a leader and being liked. And again, you want to be under the respected line there, and do your best to always leave your doubt at the door. All right, so thank you all so very much for being with me today on this presentation on developing your leadership skills. I'll go ahead and pause now, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has. You are certainly welcome to unmute yourself, ask your question, or put something that may be in the chat. I'll be